Shalom, family. So this lesson is going to be just reading a little bit from a book I recently purchased called The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. So I'm going to read a summary of the brother TCA. He did a video on the Jewish presence, the Hebrew presence in Scotland. And I'm just going to read a little bit of his summary. So in 1492, Negro Jews left Spain and surrounding areas due to growing hostility, papacy, and monarchy. Some relocated to Scotland and surrounding areas. Most accepted Christianity. Some nobility married between churches to solidify ties organized by Roman clergy. Eventually, they fell out of grace with locals for various miscellaneous reasons. Negro loyalists and sympathizers were captured and transported to the Caribbean. Scotland had a monopoly in the plantocracy of Jamaica. Right? So this is, I'm reading that just to say that the so-called Negro of Jamaica, of the Caribbean, is most likely, prior to being in the Caribbean, was in Europe's Scotland and the British Isles, right? Either they more than likely were either in Spain, Portugal, or Scotland and the British Isles, right? So that shows, this is me reading this book, this is a part of my specific ancestry as a so-called Jamaican. So I'm just going to read about a few people that, you know, in this society, we're taught that we're shown that all these rulers of Scotland and Europe, Scotland and Britain and Ireland, that they were so-called white people, right? So all these movies that we've seen in Hollywood, all these documentaries, all these, everything that's been made up, that's been shown about this period of time, medieval Europe, it shows, so-called white people, right? But this book explains that during this rulership period, these were so-called Negro rulers. So these were Israelites, right? So I'm just going to read a few of them, and I mainly picked out ones that most of my life, I thought were so-called white people, right? And I'm going to start with Macbeth, right? We all know Macbeth from the play written by William Shakespeare, right? And so let me just read a little bit about Macbeth. The Catholic Macbeth ruled Scotland from AD 1040 to 1057. He was the son of Finlay and the MacAlpin princess Donada, the daughter of Malcolm II, who was the nephew of Kenneth the Niger. Macbeth killed the ruling king Duncan I and became ruler for the next 17 years, before he was slain at the Battle of Lumphanan by Malcolm III. Just give me a second here. I'll just pause the video. Macbeth was considered to be a decent ruler since he practiced fair government. He is also known for visiting the Pope of Rome and distributing gifts to the poor. The king's wife was MacAlpin Princess Gruach, who was the great-granddaughter of Kenneth the Niger. The elegant princess and Queen Gruach was Shakespeare's immortalized Lady Macbeth. Right? So I read about Macbeth there because, I always knew of, I heard of him from the play written by William Shakespeare, and we know William Shakespeare was a Jake, right? He was one of our people as well, right? So let me go on to, this is King James. And before I read this one, we know that King James was he his line goes, he was a steward. That was the that was his that was his the last name, right? King James. That was the last name is Stewart, right? So he was from that line of Jacobins that were stewards. And we know King James was responsible for for having the King James Version Bible translated from Hebrew to the English, right? So that's what he did during his reign. So let me read a little bit about him. The Negro Catholic Moorish Scottish king, King James I, stewed to 1437. His grandfather was Robert II, the son of Marjorie, also called Margaret, who was the daughter of Robert the Bruce, who was a descendant of the Moorish Scottish king, King David I, the youngest son of Malcolm III. King Malcolm III was the nephew of King Kenneth the Niger, a descendant of Fergus More, a forefather of Kenneth MacAlpin. Okay, and now this is another uh, individual who I thought was a so-called white woman, but as we can see this by the image, this is Anne Boleyn. Queen Anne Boleyn was the astonishing, beautiful daughter of Lady Elizabeth Howard and Sir Thomas Boleyn, the first Earl of Wiltshire and Ormond. This elegant queen was very dark in color, with thick black hair, and was a standout beauty of her era. Her Majesty Anne was remarkably charming, stylish, bold, cultured, educated, lively, opinionated, classy, forthright, driven, brilliant, and witty. Right? Now let's go to, what do we got here? This is, yeah, and this, they just came out with a movie about this woman, a British queen named Mary, Queen of Scots, right? So they came out, obviously in the movie is played by a so-called white woman, but as we can see from the picture here in the description, this was a so-called Negro, an Israelite, right? So let's read about her. The Roman Catholic Mary of Scots, who loved to wear black garments, was the daughter of the Scottish King James V, who was a descendant of Fergus More, the ancestral father of Kenneth MacAlpin, Niger, Val Dub, and Kenneth the Niger, from which evolved the Stuarts. She was announced queen at the age of 6 days old and crowned 9 months later in 1542 AD. She was only 6 years old when sent to France to become a future French queen. Right? So now here is this is, I know of this king. This is King Charles, and I know he was called the Black Boy because in the Tariq Nasheed's documentary Hidden Colors, he spoke about King Charles II. So let's read a little bit of King Charles. The Black Protestant and Catholic King Charles II was the son of Charles I, who was beheaded in 1649 AD. Prior to the death of his father, the young prince exiled to France to live among the Medicis, who were of his mother's side. While residing in France, a parliamentary exhibited a wanted poster throughout England for his arrest. The poster referred to him as a tall black man. Charles' nickname while living in England was the Black Boy, and during his exile in France was called the Blackbird Most Royal. Right? Okay, now let's move on to Queen Sophia Charlotte. And, we all, us living in this area of BC, we know the Queen Charlotte Islands, right? And so these islands were named after this black queen. Her Majesty Queen Charlotte, who was a descendant of a Portuguese Negro Moorish royal family, was the wife of George III, mother of 15 children, and grandmother of Queen Victoria through her fourth son Edward, who was the Duke of Kent. Sophia Charlotte was the first English queen to reside in Buckingham Palace. It was purchased for her by her husband, George III. Right? And now I want to go to the back of the book, and I'm just reading just a little bit of history here. Okay. So it says, all European museums show fake white portraits of leaders imitating the once black rulers of Europe. Nearly every Moorish portrait of Europe's darker domineers have been whitened or painted to fabricate world history. This truth is widely acknowledged throughout Europe, Asia, and some parts of Africa, but has not reached the shores and textbooks of the United States. I wonder why that is. That's done deliberately on purpose because there's a large population of so-called Negroes who are Israelites who are in America, and America for many years have been keeping their true history away from them. A nation that heavily frowns upon black success, frightened with fear at the very thought of their own civilization deriving from the very people they are continuously persecuting. Right? The Moorish Negroes began to lose their power grip in Europe from the Renaissance to the French Revolution in AD 1789. The French main use of the guillotine was to behead the dark-skinned Moorish Negro aristocrats, a fact that movie producers and scholars have misinformed the world about. There is a Moorish African president of the United States of America named Barack Obama, who is of Irish descent from his mother's side. This also holds truth with millions of other blacks. President Obama's white mother was also of African descent through a slave named John Bunch, also known as John Punch. Okay, in order to hide the origin of Western civilization, some scholars have went as far as to rename northern Negro Africa, where civilization began, to the name Middle East. This was done in hopes to reclassify the black northern Africans who invented the world's first philosophy and mathematical sciences to be Caucasians. Right? So that was a purposeful to rename North Africa and Asia Minor as the Middle East. They purposefully did that to hide that it was the so-called Negro, these Israelites that are the foundation of that civilization, right? And to give their history to Caucasians. Those who believe this manipulative hoax are in cahoots with an old, continuous international conspiracy to erase black people from the pages of history. In the British Isles of the late 20th century, history books involving the African contribution of Europe were prohibited from entering the United States, with the exception of those texts which only exemplified slavery, savory crime, and poverty. Right? Right? So all these things were done on purpose, right? To put our history on the back burner, or to hide our history, or to downplay it, or just to completely erase it, right? And let's read this. Black Caesars, pharaohs, Empress Cleopatra, Sheba, the military genius Hannibal, and the royalties of Scotland, the British Isles, France, Portugal, Spain, Scandinavia, etc. Euro books that represented the highest level of black achievement were stamped in the rear inside cover, "Do not sell in the United States." Right? So all these books that are showing the truth about history and where our people come from, they were stamped with a note saying not to sell them in the United States, right? United States wanted their own whitewashed fake history, right? So that they can tell themselves how superior they are, right? So nobody can stop this awakening of the Israelites. We're coming into who we are. We're understanding that we are the chosen line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that we have a destiny. There's prophecy regarding our seed line and where we stand in the world and where the Most High, our Father Yahuwah, wants to place us in this world, right? And so it's important that we have a spirit of learning and knowledge. The Holy Spirit will give us wisdom and knowledge. It's important that we reach out to and have the spirit of learning and to educate ourselves on the truth. The truth, because as the scriptures say, the truth will set you free. So, as always, I say to the Israelites, stay in constant prayer, stay in these scriptures, pursue knowledge and pursue understanding, and shalom, kwam yasharallah.